Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Gregory. I'm a certified ISO 27001 implementer, and I've spent the last couple of years speaking with over 500 different tech companies around information security compliance, the challenges involved, the goals and the processes, and the ways that this can be achieved. And so today we're going to speak a little bit about ISO 27001, what it is, what it looks like, what it entails, and some of the ways that it can be achieved. And my goal for today is to make compliance a little bit less boring than it sounds. Just before we kick off, do welcome any questions throughout the process. So at any point, if a question pops up, just feel free to pop it in the question tab on the bottom right. And we'll make sure to go through all those questionnaires towards the end of the conversation. If you are feeling like you need to go into this a little bit further, or if you have specific challenges in mind, do feel free to book a conversation with me. There is a link at the top of the presentation where it says book a demo, and then we can have a one-on-one chat around compliance and the business challenges you might be facing around that. So to kick things off, I thought it might be interesting to start off with a very quick poll. So what is your gut response when a prospect asks about ISO 27001? I'm going to head over into the poll. We've got a couple options there. First one, ideal, we're certified, bring it on. Maybe we're somewhere between almost and a bit of uh-oh, or we know it's important but haven't kind of gotten there yet. We pretend the Zoom froze and just consider quitting the job. So we'll give a couple seconds for you guys to vote and we can have a look at what you all are saying. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of people saying that we know it's important, but we haven't just gotten there right yet. And this is something we see a lot, especially in earlier stage companies where you've got a lot on your plate. You're focusing on going to market, you're developing the products, there's a lot going on, and you know that compliance is important, but you just haven't got that quick driver to get you over to the next step. Sometimes this is going to come up, you never know when, and we're definitely going to explore the impacts and what this looks like in future. So I'll go ahead and just share those results. Pretty interesting. No one's certified just yet. We're happy to run through with you all on that today. So let's get into it. Eventually, every company needs security compliance. There's a famous saying that there are two kinds of companies. There are companies that have been hacked and that there are companies that are going to be hacked. And I feel like this saying can soon be applied to compliance as well. Compliance comes up, and one of the key reasons we see it come up is to boost sales and growth. In today's industry and technology, data just can't be always trusted on where it's residing. And we need to be able to show our customers that we can look after their data appropriately. And getting compliance with a global standard is often the easiest way to represent this. There are, of course, other reasons. There might be internal measures around security risks. There might be requirements if you're working with government or legal regulations, or it might be a combination of all three. And compliance, as we're seeing more and more, is not an if, but it's a when. And we know we need it, but compliance, it can be a huge pain. It's time consuming. It takes a lot of effort to implement these processes, to go through all the documentation, to get things in place and actually make sure you can keep it on track. It can be super complicated. There's a lot of legal jargon, paragraphs, lots of guessing work, a lot of time spent on Google, GPT, trying to understand, am I actually doing the right thing? Is this on the right track? And this, combined with maybe some tight deadlines that you might be facing to get this to enable a deal or to go into a market, creates a bit of a challenge and a challenge that you need to figure out on how to resolve. And there's a burden to this. We've done various studies around the impact of compliance, and especially the typical approaches of going through compliance journeys are resulting in huge delays in business. It's taking a lot of time out of resources that aren't dedicated towards compliance, meaning other projects get pushed behind or pushed to the side, which has an impact from a lot of perspectives. So what is ISO 27001 anyways? This is probably a good place to start. For those who don't know, ISO 27001 is an information security standard created by the International Organization for Standardization, or ISO. And ISO, headquartered out in Switzerland, they develop standards for a whole bunch of different topics. I laugh, I saw recently that there is a standard ISO 3103, which is a framework defining on how to correctly brew tea. So they're doing everything. Of course, the 27001 standard is focused towards information security. The idea here is to provide a business with a framework and guideline to establish, implement, and manage an information security system, or an ISMS. And there are three core dimensions to this information security. We look at confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Practically, what this means for you is three main processes towards becoming ISO certified. The first is we need to define policies based on these ISO requirements. So we need to define what we should be doing. The second step is to implement these policies. So we need to make sure that the business is actually doing what these policies are saying that we should do. The third step is to prove that we are doing what we are saying we're doing. So we need to prove what we're doing. We need to take all this, what we call evidence documentation, over to an auditor, where they would then issue an ISO certification. An ISO certificate is valid for 3 years, so it works on a 3-year cycle, but you do need to undergo what you call surveillance audits on a second and third year basis. So it is something that is very much top of mind on a yearly basis. The ISO certification process is very much based on an organizational perspective. So if you're a tech company, for example, it's not just looking at your product or your infrastructure, but it's also looking at things like operations, HR, business procedures, and really touches all corners of the business in the way that security is managed. When we look at a ISO journey, to give you a rough estimate on, you might be thinking, how long does this take? How much time do I have to spend in this? To give you a super rough ballpark, when you're working with solutions like Scytale, you can expect something along the lines of about 3 months to go from ground zero to getting that ISO certificate in place. And this is a huge contrast to what might look like up to a year if you had to do this manually yourself. A second important matter is how much time you're actually going to be spending on this if you are considering going through an ISO certification. If we're looking at a 3-month timeline, bottom line, you're probably looking at about 2 to 4 hours a week of efforts over that 3-month period to get you towards an ISO certification. So we have a very quick understanding now on what ISO is, what it roughly looks like. But how do we solve this? If we decide that we want to get some help on figuring out how to go through an ISO process and don't always have the resources to do this internally, there are 2 typical approaches to solve for this. We look at the traditional approach of consulting. So you would have a consultant come in who would give you all the sort of expertise, the advisory, and help you implement the standard according to your business, which is great, but there's still a huge amount of manual work that you're needing to do yourself. The other side of this approach from consulting and what's come out in recent years is automation technology. Scytale is leading the way in automation technology, providing an application for you to go from ground zero to ISO certification extremely fast and without having to waste time on all these kind of manual things that you need to do. To give you a quick spoiler, Scytale kind of sits in the middle of these approaches. So we've got this industry-leading technology, but we do recognize that ISO 27001 is unique for every business. There still might be a little bit of guessing work, and so we've always included an in-house professional consultant, someone to actually come in and manage this entire project for you. They're going to meet with you every week, provide all the security advisory, and a very much sort of combination approach towards solving for compliance. So I think for today, the most practical way to spend the session is to run through a demo of Scytale's technology, not just to show you how the product works and what the process would look like, but also to give you some practical examples of what implementing ISO 27000 would be and some of the things that you're going to have to do to go through that process. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get straight into the application. Let me go ahead and share that here. You should all be seeing the Scytale platform in front of you. So Scytale's application is a cloud-based web application. It's entirely agentless, and it's designed to give you everything you need to go from ground zero to getting that certificate in your hands in the fastest way possible. When we open up the platform, we're given a dashboard to give us just a quick overview on what is going on with the project. So we've got an immediate view on where we're sitting with our certification, how ready we are for the audit, when that audit is scheduled. And by the way, not just for ISO, you're able to manage 30 plus different information security standards related to different industries, privacy, regulation, etc. But bringing this back down to ISO, we're also going to have a quick view on what is actually going on across the business in terms of different departments, different processes that need to be completed. Now, when we are going through a ISO project with Scytale, the first thing that we're going to do, you'll see we've got all these modules on the left-hand side here. First thing we're going to do is head on over to the integration module. The idea here is that we want to integrate with your tech stack as much as possible. Think cloud providers, code source management tools, ticketing, HR. And the reason we want to do these integrations is for two more core functions. The first is it gives us an immediate view on what is actually going on in your business. So we can know what is compliant, what is not compliant. There's no guessing work. And you'll recall a bit earlier, I mentioned that we need to prove that we have certain things in place. So by integrating with your systems, we can automatically produce reports instead of having you or your team spend hundreds of hours developing a whole bunch of documents towards that. Once we've set up the integrations, we can head on straight over to the control center on the left-hand side. Now, ISO 27001 has 93 different controls or things that you need to be doing to get compliance. I'll briefly just run through a couple practical examples. If I just navigate down to the ISO standard, we'll have a look at things like having database encryption in place or endpoint management configurations, or maybe something like backup encryption. So these are all the kind of things that we need to be doing. Part of the onboarding, we will help customize this list based on your environment, based on your infrastructure and your procedure, so that you only need to focus on what's actually relevant for you. And you've now got a very clear path on exactly what needs to be done to get towards that compliance. At the top here, we've got some categories. So if we look at the healthy category, if anything's sitting under healthy, it means that, that's 100% good to go for ISO. Nothing needs to be done. Forget about it. Amazing. On the other side of that is attention needed. And if something's under attention needed, it means that we can automatically detect that there is something that's not compliant here. So you've got an immediate view on where the gaps are and what you need to do to fix that. Let's now look at an example of something that you would need to fix, something like database encryption. If you're managing this control, you would just come in and click on Fix Now, and you're going to get a quick view on exactly what the issue is. So why is this not ISO compliant? What do I need to do? We're going to click on this automatically collected data, and you're going to get presented with an immediate view on what is going on within that control. So in this case, I'm looking at database encryption. I can see a bunch of instances, and I can see exactly which ones don't have compliance. Now, if you didn't have a system like this, it means for every system configuration that you've got, you're going to have to go into that environment, look at what's going on, try and understand where the gaps are, which alone takes a huge amount of time. So we've got now an immediate understanding of where the gaps are. From there, we need to go and fix those gaps. We can click on How to Fix, where we get a quick view on what we need to do to implement that or get it in line with ISO standard. But of course, every company is different. There's always a bit of nuance or things that are not feasible. And that's where our consultant steps in. He's going to be working with you hand in hand along the way, advising you on how to actually implement the controls that make sense for ISO, but also make sense for the business. As soon as you've gone ahead and fixed the control, because we are automatically monitoring this, it's going to automatically move over into the healthy category. And so this is where a lot of the implementation work is going to be done, having a very clear understanding of what the gaps are, who needs to solve those gaps, how to solve them, and getting them solved. Now, there's a lot of other processes that you need to go through with ISO, and I'll be happy to run through some of those examples with you today. One of those core processes, and really the first step in this process, is setting up these policies. So we're going to head over to our dedicated policy center. Policies alone are a mission to work on. There's lots of back and forth working with legal. It takes a bunch of time, and no one really loves working on policies. So we've tried to simplify this a lot. what we're going to do is provide you with all of the ISO 27001 templates, all pre-approved and ready to go. You'll go into a template, let's say, for example, like an access control policy. And from here, you're typically just going to edit whatever's highlighted in yellow. It's going to take you a couple hours to set up all the policies. Might be a couple other changes or different nuances because, again, every company is different, but that's where the consultant's going to step in and really advise you on how to adapt this according to your business, but keep it in line with what's required. Once your policies are set up and everyone's happy, you can go ahead and update policies. You can sign them off, have them sent out to staff for review. And so a very simple way to set up and maintain your policies according to the standard. Now, once we've got our policies set up, we're working through our implementation. And one of the key requirements for going through ISO certification is the conducting of a risk assessment. We need to identify risks across the business, not just from the tech side, but across the whole organization. We need to come up with plans to treat these risks. We need to go ahead and treat them. And we need to show the auditor how we have addressed these risks and gone through that assessment. And Scytale's got a super smart way to do this on the platform. When you're part of the onboarding process, we're going to, based on your infrastructure and based on your frameworks, we'll be able to automatically identify likely risks across the business. From there, we will have a dedicated risk assessment session with you so that you'll be able to really understand what risks are present. And then from there, we need to start defining these risks. So the first thing we want to do, if I open up a risk, is we need to assign a score of that risk. Is it based on the impact or based on the likelihood? And this is, again, a requirement for ISO certification. Once we've defined the score of the risk, we need to come up with a treatment plan. So we need to say, okay, we've got this risk. What are we going to do about this risk? And the platform, again, super smart, is going to come up with a pre-calculated treatment plan based on industry best practice. But again, not everything is feasible. Maybe you don't have budget to mitigate a plan according to what's recommended. Again, consultants are going to come in and help you define a treatment plan that makes sense for you guys and is also acceptable for an audit. So once we've designed a treatment plan, we need to go ahead and make sure that we've actually done that treatment. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to link a risk to those controls that we touched on a bit earlier on in the control center. So, for example, I might have a risk about role-based access. I need to mitigate this risk. And so I'm going to assign ISO controls to this risk. And so I've assigned some controls. As soon as those controls are sitting under healthy, I can say that I've gone and mitigated that risk. So the platform provides a super effective way to conduct a risk assessment in terms of identifying risks, building treatment plans, going through the treatment implementation, and of course, approval from a management perspective as well. A couple of the things that you need to do around an ISO process, and one of them is user access reviews. So this is typically required to be done on a quarterly basis, where we need to ensure that the users of a various system are getting the right roles, they have the right roles, and they are the right employees with those usernames. Super simple way to do this on the environment. We're going to head on over to a system like GitHub, for example. And from here, we've got an immediate view on all of the usernames who have access to that environment, what their current roles are. We'll be able to assign those to employees automatically where we see a perfect score, or you might just want to populate that as well. So a super simple way to set up and manage your user access reviews. You also need to do, as part of ISO requirements, you need to do a vendor assessment. So you need to understand your vendors, your third-party providers, what kind of data they process, the impacts of that, and how that's going to be managed as well. Super simple way to do this on the platform. You'll bring in your vendors. We'll be able to understand what kind of data they process, potential risks associated with that, who's managing them, and then produce a report that can be produced for the audit as well. From an organization perspective, I touched a bit earlier on the policy side of things that we need to have policies sent out to staff and make sure that they're actually aware of these policies. And so we're able to track this all here in the people module. Through an HR integration, we're going to get an automatic understanding of the employees within your company, what they're doing, their status, and we're going to track two important things here. The first is, as I mentioned, policies. So We'll assign certain policies to certain departments or teams that they need to review. As soon as those policies are signed off, staff are going to get an email. Here's a policy, please read this, accept that you've read it, and you'll be able to track that here as well. Another requirement for 27001 is that we need to have security awareness training for all your employees. Again, super simple way to do this on the platform. You'll be able to track who's done the training here, who's not done it, have it resent out if necessary. And of course, all the training is provided to you on the platform. So the course is provided over here. It will be sent out to your staff to complete. And look, it's not like a master's degree in cybersecurity. It's a super simple training course, but really just to give you and the team what you need to get certified. And that's what we're about here at Scytale. We're aiming to provide a very clear and simple path for non-compliance experts to be able to get compliance in the fastest and less hassle way as possible. One of the other sort of key requirements, especially if you have a web application or a software product, one of the key requirements as part of the scope for ISO is to often do penetration testing. So Scytale has a dedicated in-house offensive security team where we're able to conduct penetration testing services. And super easy to manage, again, in the platform. So we'll open up a project, we'll go through scoping requirements, go through testing phases, produce an initial report, run through the report on you, see what findings we might find, any vulnerabilities. You can then manage those, create tickets for them, and push those up for a retest, which we will then conduct before issuing you the final report. And so everything, what we're trying to do here is to bring into the platform. So you've got centralization, you've got consolidation, and a full bird's eye view in what's going on around your compliance management. Now, eventually, once you've kind of ticked off all your boxes, you've done what you need to do regarding implementation, the last step is to go and get certified, right? And that's probably the most exciting part about this all. Maybe the most nervous part, but definitely the most exciting as well. And this is also going to take place in the platform. So we'll head on over to the audit management and we'll go into the standard that's being audited, of course, ISO 27001. Now, the first step here is we want to have one of our consultants do a full internal audit for you. Besides it actually being a requirement for ISO to do an internal audit and produce a report, we want to make sure that you are 100% ready to go before bringing an auditor in and handling that process for you. Once we've done an internal audit, we bring the external auditor into the platform. There's no more invasive office site visits and a whole bunch of documents sitting on the table. They're going to log into the platform, and from here, they can conduct the audit completely. So they can go through various requirements, they can go into controls, and they will see all of the evidence documentation, everything that is being produced, presented over here for review and approval as well. So it provides a super streamlined workflow of producing data, automatically collecting it, sending it over to the audit management module. And happy to share that we do have a 100% success rate with ISO certifications with all of our clients on the first time. Now, one of the key reasons for achieving compliance in a lot of cases is based on customer demand, right? You might be facing an enterprise customer that asks you to get an ISO certificate, or you might be looking to do business in a new market where you know that ISO might be a requirement. And so you want to be able to show the certification and your security in a very easy way. And the way that we've made this really easy is by producing what we call a trust center. Now, a trust center is a publicly shareable domain. It's going to give you a redacted version of all the controls and what's going on in your ISMS in a way that can be presented to the public. It's entirely customizable. So you're going to have your own branding, your own logos, configure certifications, policies, and this will then get produced on your website domain for ease of use for any potential customers. So that's a little bit about what we're doing over here at Scytale. A very hybrid approach between technology and consulting, with the goal being to take as much load off your hands towards getting towards an ISO certification and maintaining that going forward. So I'm going to pause on that for now. I hope this was helpful or insightful in any capacity, whether it was about Scytale or about the ISO process in general. And of course, we'll be happy to welcome any questions you might have. or any parts that you would like me to dive deeper in. All right. Okay, so I see I have a question. What if we have a tool that you don't integrate with? This is a great question. So look, eventually compliance can never be 100% automated. There are going to be manual controls, especially from an organizational side. And so there are workflows where you would be able to manually upload evidence. We'd have our consultants come in and understand whether that control is in place or not. And again, that's another reason for the importance of a consultant in an approach like this. However, if we do look at it from a technical side, the first thing we want to look at is that tool actually relevant for the ISO scope? You know, something like a piece of marketing software is not going to be relevant for your ISMS, and there wouldn't be a reason to integrate with this, right? So we need to understand if it's actually relevant. Second thing we want to do is we want to understand what that integration looks like and how many controls would be presented within that. We have a super agile team, an integration team, who are able to fast track integration developments and build that in place for you as well, depending on the importance. Right. Another question sort of similar to this, how about private cloud integrations? This is a good question, and up until recently, this was something that would again need to be handled manually. But some exciting news from Scytale is that we are very close within the next few months of having our own API developed, which would allow for custom integrations to be configured and pulled through on that as well to be able to solve that integration. How would it be for a software development service provider, as we don't have much on our own and all we do is mostly when we are handling a project, it would be on the client's environment? Great question. So the first thing we're doing when we are starting off with an ISO project is to define the scope. So we need to define what is applicable, what is not applicable, what is not relevant. And in your case, a lot of IT controls that are typically required are not going to be relevant because those are sitting in the client's environment, and they would actually be the responsibility of your clients. So eventually what it would look like for you is a lot less IT controls, but more organizational controls. And it's good news as well, because it means you're going to have a shorter list of requirements and a shorter project to complete. All right. Do you continue using the software after getting certified? Typically, yes. Reason for this is ISO 27001 is not a one and done. It's something that you are continuously being audited on, where you need fresh evidence documentation. You need to prove that you are continuously going through the process. And to maintain ISO 27001 effectively means that there are things that need to be done on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis. And the Scytale project management element provides a super efficient way to actually maintain this in the back end without having to, forget about it a few months and then all of a sudden get back into it and spend a whole bunch of time and running around trying to get this in place. Eventually, everything can be exported out of the platform. So if you prefer to, run things your own way after implementation, you can. But we don't see that too often here at Scytale. All right. Ben, are we able to provide some rough pricing on the platform? Ben, that does depend on quite a few factors around company size, scope of services, but we'd be happy to send you something over email if we could just get a couple questions from you around those factors, and we could give you some basic indications. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful. If there are any more questions after the answers to those questions, I'm here to help. Just let me know. What is the timeline for APIs being available? I believe this is latest August that this would be in place. We can get some confirmation from our product team and get that out to you as well, Mikhail. All right. Seems that right now there are no further questions. Well, thank you all for your time. Again, I hope this call was useful, whether it was just to provide some insights on the ISO process and the journey, or what it might look like with a solution like Scytale. If you would like to understand this in a bit more depth in terms of what it looks like for your organization specifically, or what other things might look like in terms of pricing and processes, feel free to book a conversation with me in the Book a Demo tab above, and I'd be happy and look forward to meeting you. So thank you, everyone, and have a lovely day.